everyone. Welcome to Recalibrate the podcast, where we believe that telling stories matters. And listening to stories is one of the easiest ways to change your life, change the way you think about things, change the way you do things, sometimes without even realizing it. So I am Kala. I'm your host here of Recalibrate. And today I'm rocking solo in this podcast episode, and I'm here to talk about the death of my dad. Oh, I already feel like I'm going to cry on this one. I can pretty much guarantee that I will. That's life. That's humanity. Oh God, here we go. So before we get into it, I want to take a moment for myself and for everyone listening to take 3 deep breaths wherever we're at, whatever we're doing. And I'm going to light a candle and say a prayer. So just to help myself ground into the energy and prepare my mind and my heart to speak on this, I just want to breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth with a sigh. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you would join me, I would love that. It's good for all of us to get tuned in with our breath and take some deep breaths when we can remember. So allow me to be that reminder for you right now. So let's let the air that we have in our lungs go and breathe in through our nose. And out through our mouth with a sigh. I'm going to do that 2 more times without cueing you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here with me. I'm going to light this candle and just ask and pray that my dad join me here in this space. Allow me to speak without crying and share the truth of my story, our story, so that people listening may feel the love for their own parents and feel the inspiration to call their parents, to ask them things, to have the conversations, to take the photos, to remember that we all will die and that everyone we love will die as well. So I just pray that everyone listening can really feel that truth, not in a scary way, but in a way that inspires us to move with more love, with more compassion, with more forgiveness, with more presence. And may that ripple out to everyone that we love, so that when the time comes that everyone we love dies, or when we die, that we all may know the truth of the love that we feel for each other and the forgiveness that we feel for each other. Amen. Aho. I never know what to say at the end of those prayers, to be totally honest. All right. Well, we're crying. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And, it's my dad's birthday this Sunday, December 7th. He would have been 79 years old, I believe. 78, 79. He would have been not quite 80. And he would have been 79. He was born in 1946. And so I wanted to release this podcast on Monday, December 8th, just as a way to honor my dad, and also in preparation of the podcast that I'm going to be releasing on December 15th, which is going to be about grief with my grief teacher, mentor, Shaylin, who has just been absolutely phenomenal and instrumental in my life. And so I thought that it would be a good time for me to share the story of my own grief and my own journey with my dad, so that you guys can know a little bit about that. I did a whole series on Instagram of stories of my life, and I didn't even talk about my dad dying. It feels big, and I knew I was going to cry. So here I am doing it in a whole podcast. So thank you for joining. Thank you for caring. And we'll get into it. We'll start kind of, at the beginning, I guess. My dad did not want another child. My dad had 2 children from a previous marriage, My brother is autistic, though truthfully at the time, I mean, he's just recently been diagnosed as autistic. He's in his 50s, so when he was born, his official diagnosis was mentally retarded. Um, so it's just true. So my dad, that was my dad's firstborn, his son, and then my dad had my half sister, and he was scared. He was scared that he was going to have another child who had, mental issues or whatever. And he was older and he just wanted to live his life and he didn't want any more kids. My sister was 11 when I was born. But my mom really wanted children. She had never had children. She had an abortion. And so eventually my dad just came around and he said, okay, like we can have a baby, but I'm not going to change my life for it. And that was something that I read in a book that my dad wrote for my mom called Options. My dad was a writer. He wrote books. He had an advertising agency. When I was born, he was highly successful. I rode home from the hospital in a limousine. And he ended up losing his advertising business, losing everything. And we moved to Arizona. And I held on. I read that book that my dad wrote about my mom's abortion called Options, and in it I learned that he didn't want me and that he wasn't going to change his life for me, so he said, and I held on to that, and it was like a driving force of my pain and disconnect with my father for much of my life. It always seemed like my dad was really good with me when I was young and little, and we were playing games and all of that. But as soon as I got to be a teenager with my own opinions and my own thoughts, he was not quite as loving or kind or patient, you could say. And we got into a lot of fights. A lot of fights. There was a lot of drama. I was definitely a psycho bitch, and I hated my dad. I spent a lot of my life hating my dad. And when I was 19, I'm not even going to get into the whole story, but basically my dad was like messing with other women online and sending them a lot of inappropriate things. And I was the one who found it on his phone. And that was highly traumatizing for me. My parents were going to get a divorce, but they ultimately didn't. They stayed together, and my dad and I didn't speak for like 3 years. I didn't talk to my dad for a long time when I was like 19 to like 21, 22. And it wasn't until I was in college, I think it was a little bit after my senior year. I don't know exactly when, but my friend in my sorority, her dad died unexpectedly out of nowhere, and it rocked me, and I was like, holy shit, my dad's gonna die. So I was at Country Thunder and I was drunk, and I decided to call my dad and tell him that I forgive him and that I was sorry for not talking to him or speaking to him for so long. And he had heart issues and I was barely there for him. Like, truthfully, if I look back at how I treated my dad, there's a lot that I'm not proud of and that I wish I could take back, because I felt so self-righteous in how I was treating him. But now I know he's, just a human being who was doing the best that he could. So, my dad had like quadruple bypass, and I did show up for that one, but there was just a lot of health stuff for my dad. Um, he got a knee replacement surgery my sophomore year of high school, and ever since then, he hardly was able to walk or move. And he got more knee replacement surgeries after that. And anyway, so I forgave my dad, but I didn't really know what that looked like for a long time. I didn't know how to have a relationship with my dad. I wanted to forgive him, but he was constantly pissing me off. Like, I was constantly pissing him off too. Like, he and I butt heads, and now in his death, I can see it's because I'm a lot like him, which is like so annoying. I don't want to be like him. I didn't, but I am. And I'm actually quite proud to be like him now that I can see the beauty of who he was. God, am I going to cry through this whole fucking episode? Maybe. It's all good. So, yeah, I spent a lot of time not knowing how to ultimately forgive my dad, and we would fight, and then we'd make up, and we, hung out and went to happy hour. My dad was definitely a drinker. He loved his wine. He drank a lot, and not like in the morning or anything, but every night he drank. And I would drink too. I was drinking a lot at the time too. And so we'd go to happy hour and we'd hang out, and I took him to his first Cardinals football game and all these things, but a lot of that didn't happen until after I sat in an ayahuasca ceremony in 2020. Um, there was so much in that ceremony, and I won't get into all of it, but really the takeaway from that ceremony was I just had this download, or whatever you want to call it, this insight from the medicine that my dad loved me, and the medicine or my own mind, whatever you want to call it, told me that I needed to go home and I needed to sit on my dad's lap and tell him that I love him. And that's what I did. When I got home from ceremony, my dad was in his, recliner, the one that's like got a lift so he can get up. Like a real old man recliner, and I got in his recliner with him, and I sat on his lap, and I told him I loved him and I forgave him. And that wasn't until 2020, like I had tried up until then, but that was really the moment that things really shifted for us. And not to say we didn't. God, my dogs are like licking each other. Hey, Peanut, stop it. It was a risk for me to leave the door open with the dogs coming in, but it's my floofy grief dog and I just wanted him close. So, Peanut, they're like making out. Anyway, so as you can tell, this is a very casual podcast, which is how I like it. So I hope you like it like that too. um, I forgave my dad, and after that, things really shifted for us. I had tried before then, and it's not like we didn't have a relationship before then, but it was in that moment when I came and sat on his lap that I just realized that, like, I'm my dad's little girl, like, I'm his baby. And he loved me, even though I was a bitch, and even though I was a pain in the ass and unforgiving and unkind. Like, my dad loved me, and I loved him too. Despite his flaws and the things he had done to hurt me, I just realized I loved my dad because he was my dad. And that's not to say we didn't get in fights after that. We definitely did. And, we were always kind of butting heads and disagreeing about politics or whatever. But over time, we just got a lot closer and had a lot more understanding for each other. And I'm trying to remember. So after I lost my lawyer job when I was in 2017, Peanut, I I didn't have to. Well, I did. Peanut, come here. Come here. Lay down. I lost my lawyer job and I decided to move back in with my parents. And my dad, what I could tell, was like, happy to support me. He always told me I had a place to come home to. Um, but he also didn't want me to just be an unsuccessful cat lady who lived at home. And, I was dog sitting at the time, and he was like, "You're so much smarter than being a dog sitter," which is true. So I was living with my parents and, had forgiven my dad, sat in this ayahuasca ceremony, and we were coming around, having a good relationship, living together. And then I met Jake. And I met Jake September of 2021, and I ended up moving to Colorado April 5th of 2022. And I felt really guilty because I was leaving my dad behind and leaving my mom to care for him. At this point, my dad was like mostly in a wheelchair. He was falling a lot. He was unstable. He had heart issues. He had like all this stuff. He fell down the stairs at my sister's house in Minnesota and went to the ER, and it was super traumatic. I can still see him tumbling down the stairs and bleeding. You know, that I spent a lot of time going to the hospital with my dad, because he would fall or, you know, had a gallbladder infection or just whatever. He had a lot of health issues. And so I met Jake, and then I decided to move to Colorado, even though I knew I was leaving my dad behind and my mom behind. And they wanted me to go. Like, my dad was grateful that I fell in love and that I found someone. And he was always of the belief that I had to, like, leave the nest and go live my own life. So he wasn't at all resentful of me leaving. He was very happy that I was leaving. Like, it brought him peace to know that I had found a man. And, like, he never really cared if I had kids or not, but he wanted me to, you know, find a partner and have a career and all of these things. And so he was very grateful and happy that I moved to Colorado to be with Jake. And at the same time, like, if I ever got in a fight with Jake or didn't know if I should stay, he would always text me and tell me that I could always come home, that there was always a place for me at home. And that just meant so much to me to know that my dad would always welcome me back, you know? And in in like September or so, August maybe of 2022, I was talking to some friends who I met online and through Recalibrate, and this woman told me about hospice, and she was like, you know, it sounds like maybe your dad could qualify for hospice. Like, maybe you should look into it. And so I came home to Arizona and we met with the hospice lady. We had actually met with her previously while I was still living in Arizona, but she was so insensitive and terrible that we ended up not signing my dad up for hospice. But then a few months later, like 6 months later in August or September, we did sign my dad up for hospice, and he started having someone coming to the house every so often to um, just like help take care of him, help wash him, help with all of these things. And so he was on hospice, but we were told that most people on hospice die within 6 months, but like I did not think my dad was anywhere near death. Like, I knew he had health issues and mobility issues, and that he had a hard time getting up and out in public and such, but I didn't think that my dad was going to die at all. So Jake and I and the kids went back for, I think it was like Thanksgiving or fall break or something. We went back and we went to Oregon Stop Pizza in Mesa with my dad in the wheelchair, and he could barely get in and out of the car, and he was sick. He ended up getting sick after that, and it ended up being the last place that my dad went out to eat, like the last time he left the house in public, you know, besides one other time. And I didn't know at the time that that was going to be the last time that we'd go out to eat. But I have photos of me and Jake with my dad, and so um yeah, that was that. And then we came in back for Christmas, and we were supposed to drive back. We ended up staying for New Year's and Christmas, and we spent Christmas with my family, and the kids were there. And we were supposed to drive back on like New Year's Day. And when we got to Prescott or Payson, I don't know, the roads were closed. We had to turn around because the roads were completely closed. We could not get to Colorado or the halfway point where we were going. So we turned around and we spent one more night with my dad and my mom. We went back to their house and we slept there one more night. And the next day, the kids all hugged my dad. And I took a photo of each of them hugging him, like, just intuitively, and that was the last time they ever saw my dad. Like, they barely knew my dad. Oh, and one other story about this is my dad was really big into like rockets, and when he was a kid he built rockets. Like, he would borrow, I don't remember what chemicals from the science lab at his school, but they would be totally illegal to give you those chemicals now, and he would borrow the chemicals and then make like a homemade rocket and shoot it off. So with the kids he had bought this rocket, like a rocket kit. And we went and took him to the park with the kids and my mom and Jake, and we blasted these rockets, and they all like came back. So we got to shoot the rocket like 3 times, and it came back, which is like pretty cool because most of the time, a lot of times, you lose the rocket. And all the other kids at the park were joining in, and my dad, was there, and he loved it. And so that was the last time my dad left the house. And then I took the pictures of the kids with my dad, and then we ended up leaving, 1 day later. So we got one more day with my dad. It was the last time they saw him, and then we went back to Colorado. And just like a few weeks later, like January 20th or 26th or something, my mom was really struggling with my dad because he was falling out of the bed, and she just felt like she couldn't take care of him, and he was at home alone, and like hospice wasn't giving enough care. He needed more care. So I came home just a few weeks later to help my mom look for a assisted living facility for my dad. And he was 76 at the time. And we found one, and they were great. And so on like February 1st or 2nd or something, after I was there a few days, we moved my dad into an assisted living facility. And this was a really hard decision because we wanted him to be home, but my mom was like, she was still working, she was paying for everything, and also trying to take care of him, and she was hurting her own back and hurting herself trying to lift him and care for him because he was falling all the time. He fell out of bed. At this point at home, he had like a hospice bed in the bedroom, and I came home and we hung out and we watched movies in bed, and he was in that hospice bed, and then it just got to be too much for my mom, and she couldn't do it anymore. Like, she was hurting herself, and so we made the tough decision to move him into an assisted living facility because even I can't I couldn't come home and take care of him, and he didn't want me to. Like, my dad did not want me to be the one to see him naked, to wipe his butt. He was shitting his pants. He was like, he would be so embarrassed that I'm telling you guys this, but he was just losing it, and he didn't want his daughter to, it was like, just like almost like degrading or embarrassing for him. He didn't want me to be the one to wipe his ass. So he he also didn't want to hurt my mom. So he was in agreement that, perhaps he should go move into this facility, and it was really hard. It was really fucking hard to move him into there, but I did my best to make his room, he had his own room and with a window, and I brought some wind chimes and hung the wind chimes outside of the window because he loved these like wooden wind chimes. I hung photos all around his room, like that he loved from his office. I set up the TV. I got him a mini fridge. I just like made it as homey and as comfortable as I could. And um, I hung out with him there. My mom hung out with him there. We got him settled. And I hung out with him on the Thursday before I drove home. We watched The Big Lebowski and drank some wine in his room. And then I left. I said goodbye. That was the last time I ever saw my dad. The last movie we ever watched together. My dad loved movies. And we talked on the phone after that, but I never thought he was gonna die. Like, I left on, like, February 5th or something, February 4th, I don't remember, but, um, then just a few days later, um, I talked to my dad on I don't remember what day of the week he died, but I talked to my dad on February 8th, and, um, he was really stressed out because, like, this financial thing happened, I'm not gonna get into it, but basically, he thought that my mom was gonna owe a lot of money because of a decision that he had made to, like, lapse on some payments, and he was really stressed out, and I was like, "It's okay, Dad, like, we're gonna get through it, we love you," and we hung up, and that was the last conversation I had with my dad, because the next day, I was going to work with Jake, we had just started cleaning carpets and air ducts together, and we were going to walk into this house to clean their house, and my mom called me twice, and she never does that, and so she I walked outside and I answered, and she was like, "Gala, your dad is dying." And I was like, "What? Like, what? No way." And so she put me on speakerphone, and I just asked him to wait for me to be there. I wanted to be there with him. I had just been there, like, 4 or 5 days prior, and she was like, "It's okay, um, we'll look into flights and whatever, and you can come, or you can drive," and so I talked to Jake, and we just like, no one thought my dad was gonna die as fast as he did, so Jake was like, "Well, I gotta like, we're here, he had already started working, and so he was like, "We like, I can take you home, but I gotta do this job, and then we can go to Arizona and whatever," and, um so I was like, "Okay, well, I don't wanna go home alone, I'll just come in with you and work," and then I was working, cleaning, and I got the call from my mom that my dad was dead, and I was on the floor of a stranger's home, just crying that my dad was dead, and I just remember saying, like, "He's dead? Like, he's dead? Dad's dead? Dad's dead?" Like, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, like, I knew he was dying, and I wrote, like, this really beautiful, in my opinion, like, piece about my dad dying, but I had no idea that he was, like, dying that soon, that fast. And then he was gone, like, that was it, he was dead. And I just, like, oh god, it was awful. It was awful. And, I spent the next, like, 2 years just in a haze. I didn't even realize how much of a haze I was in, but I was in a haze. I couldn't really do anything for 2 years. It really fucked me up. Thanks, Dad. Just kidding. But, so that night, um, Jake and I were like, "Well, we gotta go get some wine." Like, Steve would want some wine. Like, he would want us to have wine. So we went to this liquor store right by our house, and as we were checking out, the person in front of us, or we were waiting to check out, the person in front of us was like, "Oh, here's my phone number for the rewards," and they were like, "It's under Joe," or something. They were like, "Oh, it's actually not under Joe. It's Steve's got it." And my dad's name was Steve, and was Steve. I don't remember how to say that. And so it just felt like a synchronicity of like Steve's got it. And we were next in line, and I just started crying, and Jake started crying, and we told the lady, and it was just crazy. Like, I just couldn't believe, I just kept saying, like, my dad's dead. Like, my dad's dead. And even still, sometimes I'll just be like in the car, and I'm like, so fucking weird that my dad's dead. Like, my dad is dead. I don't have a live dad anymore. Like, it's just me and my mom, my half sister. And so then I came back to Arizona, and we I flew back and we planned the funeral, and there were some synchronicities around that. I met some like really beautiful angels really on the flight, and I won't even get into it, but the synchronicities and the ways that my dad has like shown up for me have really been pretty pretty next worldly, otherworldly, next level, phenomenal. And so we planned the funeral, and then I flew home, and then Jake and I drove out for the funeral. And my mom works in the funeral business, so she gets like a huge discount. So it was like a honestly pretty bitchin' funeral. Excuse me. It was like really beautiful. He had a whole big, beautiful altar of all the things that he loved, and I was like going through his office trying to pull things to like put on this big altar, and there were my dad collected old vintage cameras, and I was looking at all of the cameras, and I was like, which one should I pick? And I just like, I think I should pick this one, and I grabbed this camera, and I later found out that that's the actual camera that he used to take photos of the Beatles and the Beach Boys and all these people when he was younger. And so it was like the camera to choose, and it was like he was guiding me and showing me. And so we had a beautiful funeral. I had a friend fly out from California, and just so many people show up for me, and I was just in a haze. I wore my dad's sweatshirt for months. I would just wear his sweatshirts. I'm wearing his t-shirt right now. This was his t-shirt that I make that he bought of mine. And yeah, I just found comfort in wearing his clothes, and it was just really hard to lose a parent. Even though, like, we had had a rocky relationship and things had been tough. And one of our last conversations together, um, I don't remember what led up to it, but I just looked him in the eyes and I was like, we forgive our parents, like, we forgive each other, and I love you. And he was like, I would hope so. I love you too. And I could just, like, remember his eyes looking at me, like, it was just this, like, knowing that we forgave each other and that we loved each other. But I just wish I would have done it sooner, or that I wouldn't have been a bitch all along. That I would have been more forgiving and kind and understanding that he's a human being who's doing the best he can. And who am I to judge him and to make him wrong and be so self-righteous? So that's my biggest advice for you if you have a parent who's alive is, um, I don't know everyone's situation or story, and maybe some people are justified or feel good about not having a relationship with their parents, and like, maybe this advice isn't for you particularly, but if you're someone who is sensitive or loving or, um, things like that, has a lot of feelings, like I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to grieve your parents dying, regardless of your relationship and what it looked like with them. So my advice would be to forgive them and love them while you can, while they're alive, and to ask them questions and to hear their stories, even if you've heard them 100 times before. Because one day your parents are going to die, and then they're dead, and there is no second chance. There is no redo. There is no, oh, I wish I could have said this. It's fucking done. Like, it's the most final thing I've ever experienced. Like, the finality of death is like, whoa, next level, over, done. No redo, nothing to do, nothing to say. It's over. So if you have something on your heart that you're even fucking thinking of saying, say it. That's my advice. Because there's no second chances. And like, I think one of the biggest feelings that I've had since my dad died is like, damn, dude, I wish I could go back and do it all again. Like, I wish I could go back and be a child again. I wish I could go back and live my whole life again and just be nicer and be more forgiving and be more kind and hear his stories and write them down and take more photos and take more videos and all of that, because it's over now. And I just wish I would have been nicer. And I've had to grieve that for sure. Like wailing, crying, like, I'm so sorry, Dad, I'm so sorry. And I know that he knew that. And I find peace in that because I had written him letters and, I knew he was going to die, and I did a lot of work while he was alive to ease the grief for myself and for him, for his soul. And it still wasn't enough. Like, there was still grief, there was still regret, there was still remorse, there was still guilt. Even though I had done so much, like sat on his lap, written him letters, apologized, looked in his eyes, asked his stories, all of these things. I had done all of these things, and yet it wasn't enough. And I wish that I could have done more. So please heed my advice. If you have any inclination to, I would urge you to do it. I need a drink. Hold on. I'm like, what a mess of a podcast, but I'm going to release it anyway because fuck it, I'm a human being. And this is the human experience, and grief is an integral and major part of the human experience, and it's not going anywhere, and everyone you love is going to die. I try to remind myself with Jake, like when I fucking hate him and he's driving me crazy because I'm in my luteal phase, I have to remind myself, like, Jake is going to die. And the truth is, Jake could die today. I could die today. We don't know. We take for granted and think that we'll live this old, long, prosperous life, but that is not a guarantee. We could die at any moment, and the people we love could die at any moment. And so we have to live with that awareness of death in mind. And I think that it helps us be more loving and more patient and more forgiving if we can remember that. So, yeah, after my dad died, my dad was a writer, as I said, and he wrote a 76-page story for his kids. It was like my story for my kids, and it was all these stories that we had heard, but he wrote them down for us, and I loved it. I read the whole thing. I spoke at my dad's funeral. I said fuck in front of the whole congregation. His friends came up to me after and were like, your dad would be so proud of you. And they were like, I've never heard anyone say fuck at a funeral. That was great. I gave out my stickers. We were all going to die, and it was beautiful. It was a party. It was great. And, then it set in, and it just kept going. It's, when I say it, I mean the grief. And it's still here. I still walk with grief. I never know when it's gonna hit me. Sometimes it's peaceful, and sometimes it's like a big ocean wave crashing in. But it's always there, or like just right around the corner. It's like grief is just right here with me now. Before my dad died, it was anticipatory grief. I absolutely lived with that and anticipated my dad's death and grieved him before he even died. I do the same with my mom. And it sucks. When my dad died, my tooth died. I had like I went to the dentist. They were like, "You got to pull your tooth," and that died. Oh my god, my laptop's gonna die. Speaking of death, let me fix that real fast. But what the heck? Why isn't it plugged in? Oh no! Oh no! Oh god, maybe we can edit this part out. There we go. Okay. My tooth died. Anyway, my tooth died. My printer's going. And then the tooth that died was right on the grief meridian, and it was like when my dad died, my tooth died because of just the immense grief that I felt in my body. And grief is absolutely a visceral, biological experience, and you feel it in your body, and you have impacts in your body whether you are aware of it or not. So I had to deal with that, and I spent the first year really just drinking. I drank a lot of wine to deal with my dad's death, and I smoked a lot of pot. And not like all day every day. I wasn't like a full-blown alcoholic, but I definitely numbed myself, and I don't really have shame in that. Like, even when I was meeting with an herbalist at the time, she was like, I think it's good. I think you need to do it, and you can process, later, and the wine will fall off, the weed will fall off, and it did. She was right. But I allowed myself to do what I needed to do to get through it, and I did a lot to get through it. Um, one major, I mean, so let me take myself back. So, like I said, I really spent, it was like 2 years, maybe a little longer than that, where I just couldn't really do anything. Like, I couldn't work on Recalibrate. I couldn't work on Jake's business. I couldn't hardly be present. I just, like, went through the motions. I was going through the motions. I was cleaning carpets and air ducts. I was trying to laugh and smile. I was trying to be a good stepmom, trying to be a good partner, but, like, everything changed. Like, mine and Jake's sex changed, our relationship changed, my relationship with the kids changed. Like, everything was not so light and fluffy and airy anymore. It was like I was with grief. And I distinctly remember wishing that I could wear, like, a button or something that said, like, my dad died, please be nice to me. Because it was like I just wanted the world to know that I was grieving so that I could get a little bit of, like, compassion. And I still think and long for, like, that's something that historically was part of our culture. We had black ribbons and black hats and black lace over our faces and, like, black things on our door to communicate to the community and the village and the people that we were grieving. And then we were treated with, like, a little bit more compassion and grace and kindness, and, like, we've lost that in today's society. And it's like, I guarantee you go to the grocery store, there's like fucking 15 people around you who are grieving, and it's like, maybe not actively, but there there's like a point in your life where it's like before grief and after grief, and it's like, now I walk with grief. That's how it feels for me, at least. Like, I will never be without grief. And before that, it was like I was with grief, but it was like this anticipatory grief, or this, like, grief was nearby, in the sense that, like, people, I had witnessed a lot of death, and a lot of people from my high school had died and things like that, but it was never like this, like, gut wrenching grief that it is when you lose a parent. And once I experienced that, it's everything's shifted. I'm a different person. And I walk with grief now. And I will always walk with grief. And only other people who have gone through that initiation know what the fuck I'm talking about. And most of our society has no fucking clue how to deal with grief. No one knows what the fuck to say. Like, oh, he's in a better place. He would want you to be happy. La 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 la. Everything happens for a reason. Like, please, for the love of God, don't say that. Because it doesn't help. And yeah, I'll do a post sometime about. Sorry, I've got, like, phlegm and tears. I should have brought some tissues in. I could blow my nose in this towel. Anyway, I've got, some rumblings about a post about, like, what to do when someone's grieving and how to react with that, because people don't fucking know. They really don't have any idea how to be with grief. And so they just say dumb shit to try and make it go away. But it's not going anywhere for any of us who know grief. It just is there. And as Jana said in one of our last podcasts, like, the grief doesn't get smaller, you get bigger. I think that is true. And I also think that it just is. The grief just is a part of you, and you learn how to adapt and live with that grief that shows up. And I did a lot to, try and process my grief. I did a death doula training through Anelda, and that was really beautiful and helped me, like, figure out how I wanted to move through the grief and help other people through grief. I've thought about being a death doula, but I just haven't done it. Um, I did that training, and then I started attending Grief Temple with Shaylin. Someone sent me Shaylin's page, and she did this free monthly grief temple, and I went and I showed up and I talked about my dad's death and my desire to be a mother and grieved that in community. And then because I had signed up for Shaylin's grief temple, I only went one grief temple, I believe. Then she started a program called Elemental Grief. And it was basically a 7-week journey where she walked you through the elements like fire or air, earth, ether, water, an opening and closing ceremony. And we walked with our grief. And I immediately, once I got the email, I was like, I need to fucking do this. I know I need to do this. And she was like, I'm providing a scholarship. You can apply. And so I applied for the scholarship and I got it. I only had to pay a portion of the cost. And it was hands down the most transformative and phenomenal and meaningful and impactful container, quote unquote, container that I've ever done in my life. Like, I'm so excited for this podcast with Shaylin because she is the real fucking deal. Like, I don't know that I've ever met anyone so embodied in what they teach, and her presence in the container and the space that she holds is just next level. Like, I will sing her praises for all of my days. Like, she absolutely is doing her life's work, and if you ever have the opportunity to work with Shaylin, you need to do it because she's amazing. And I worked through a lot of my grief in that container, a lot of my grief about my dad, as well as like Jake's fertility, and it was right in the midst of that we were learning about like Jake having a 0 sperm count. And um so that was like a really transformational experience for me. And I'm sure maybe Shaylin and I will talk about it, or I'll do another podcast about it perhaps. But we did like different rituals basically. Like, I buried some items with the earth. I had another ceremony with my dad. She was like, have a meal or a beverage or something with your loved one, and sit down with them and talk with them. So I was like, my dad loved wine. I went and got a bottle of Chardonnay. I poured him half in a glass. I poured myself half in a glass. I gave us each some chocolate. I lit a candle and I sat down and I talked with my dad. And I was just crying and talking with him like he was there. I was sitting on the couch. He was like, I left space for him on the couch. And we were talking. And I put on this playlist. First, I put on like a 6-hour playlist I made of my dad's, and it was like not the right vibe. So I switched to his playlist that I made for his funeral. And it's like a 3-hour playlist. And I was listening to it and we're talking. And right at the end, right when the candle's about to go out, we're talking, and I'm saying this like he's there, but I was talking to my dad, and all of a sudden on this playlist starts playing an Icaro. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, it was an Icaro de Protección, so it was like, I don't even remember how it goes, but it's like nine 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 nine, like, like fucking not the Beatles, not the Beach Boys, not Sade. It's fucking an Icaro. And I just got like mad goosebumps all over my whole body because I was like, this is my dad, like using my language to communicate with me that he's like here. And my mom reminded me that even before my dad died, I was asking them like how they're going to show up for me and how we'll communicate once they pass. And I guess I said, I don't even remember saying this, but I said, like, dad's going to talk to us through music. And that's absolutely been the case. Like, him communicating to me and my mom through music. And I think my sister as well. So when that came on, I was just like, whoa. And then the next song that played, which was the last song that played, was How Long Has This Been Going On? And I was like, oh, well, he's been doing this a long time. So we had that. And it was just a phenomenal container. I had a lot of insights and like breakthroughs and just working through the grief. And just felt really held and supported in that space. So that was beautiful. And then after that, Jake for Mother's Day got me, my friend had sent me this album called Whales Songs for Grief by Alexander Blakely, Ale, and I listened to it. She was like, you should listen to this with headphones in the dark, or like headphones straight through. So I set up a mirror, lit a candle, listened through headphones, and like watched myself cry. I know I'm a little weird, but that's what I did. And because Shailene also talks about like mirror work and stuff too, and candle work and all that. So I did that. I listened to the album and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And so I went on her website and signed up for her emails because I was like, whatever this bitch does, I want to be a part of it. And then she sent an email that she was doing a grief ritual or grief retreat in Evergreen, which is like 30 minutes from my house in July. And I told Jake, I was like, holy shit, like this woman's coming and doing this thing. Like, I think I want to go, but it's, a good amount of money. And I was like, so I don't know. And then he signed me up for it. Well, he made me a gift card for me to sign myself up for it, actually, for Mother's Day. And so I signed up for that. And that was, holy shit, amazing. That was also an amazing, profound, beautiful ritual that I got to do for my grief. And again, I was grieving my dad as well as my desire to be a mother. And it feels very related. Like, my dad knew that Jake was like, I don't want any more kids. And my dad was like, tell Jake, like, I have a recording of my dad saying, like, tell Jake I was scared too. But I'm so glad that I had more kids, and he will be so glad too. And so it really has felt like my dad has been a huge instrument in like, in, after my dad died, then Jake changed his mind and got the surgery. And it just has felt like, I've just heard my dad say, like, I got you, baby. Like, I got you. He would, towards the end, he always said, I love you, baby. And so I have his fingerprint on a necklace that I wear every day. And on the back, it says, love you, baby. Love, Pops. He never called me baby until he was like almost dying. And then it was like, I was his baby. And, yeah, so my dad's just felt really instrumental in that as well. So it feels very related to me always, like grieving my dad as well as grieving this motherhood. And I just feel like my dad has a part in it. And, I've had people tell me, like, I can just see your dad, like, holding your babies. So I like to hold on to that image, whether it's real or not, that, you know, he's up there loving them, because the truth is, like, he'll never get to see them in the physical, he's dead. Fucker. Uh, but yeah, that grief retreat I went to with Ale was just phenomenal. I'll put the link to Whales Songs for Grief in the show notes because it's so beautiful. And if you are walking through grief or thinking about grief or anything like that, you should listen to it. It's really good. And so I went to that ritual, and I guess I could briefly tell that story. It was, we spent like the day talking and processing our grief in small groups and big groups, and everyone talked about like the horse they rode in on, why they were here. And then we got paired into groups, and I was paired in a group by chance with the only pregnant woman there and the only child there. It was me, a pregnant woman, and a child. And we got to talk and share our grief, and it was beautiful. And then we got ready for our ritual, and that was basically, we all brought like cedar boughs, or I brought blue spruce and different things, and we made like the room was a rectangle. We like basically split it so there was like a doorway, and then the rest of the boughs were like separating a wall pretty much. And then in the front of the room, there was a black cloth, which was our grief altar. It had water and flowers and boughs and all these things on it. And then in front of it were like 3 beds, and like on the floor, and then a big mound of pillows with these sticks where you could beat the living fuck out of it. And then in the back were 3 altars. There was an ancestor altar, a transformation altar, and a resilience altar. where we put items that like made us feel resilient, the item that we wanted to transform, and the like our ancestors. And so I put my dad's baby shoes on the transformation altar because I was really hoping to transform and move through my grief about my dad dying and also the grief of not having a child. And like I said, it's just wrapped into one, him and that. So I had his baby shoes on there. And then it's like we learned this song, and it was Ale, who's like in her late 30s, early 40s perhaps, and then this other man, Lawrence Cole, who is in his like 80s. He's phenomenal. They're both singers and songwriters. So they drummed, and we sang the same song for 4 hours. And it went, I'll just sing it for you. It went, "Hey ancestors, hear us calling. We your children seek healing. Hey ancestors, hear us calling. We your children are healing. Power, power, your love is our power. Power, power, our love is your power. Hey ancestors," like over and over. And so you're standing in the back of the room in the village, and everyone's back there, and they're drumming in chairs right by the. You can't see my hands unless you're watching the video, but they're drumming right by the entrance to the grief shrine. And so the purpose is you're in the back, everyone's singing, dancing, and you go to the back altars, and if you feel like you're going to cry, then you take it to the shrine. Tits. So immediately as soon as we started singing, she was like, "Altar's open," or "Shrine is open." And I was like, well, fuck, I'm going to cry. So I went up, and when you go through the gate, you never go alone. So you either ask someone to come with you or you raise a finger and someone follows you. And then they basically just stand behind you, singing, holding space for you while you grieve. And then when you're done crying, you feel like you're complete with your process, you go back out through the opening in the boughs of cedar, and the village cheers for you. They're like, "Yay!" And then if you feel like you're going to cry again at any point, you go move back up. And you just do this until everyone's done. And we did it for like until midnight, like 4 hours. And they actually had to call it a little early, which they've never done before because they were all fucked up from the altitude. So it was beautiful. And then I got to go up with the child and stand behind her. I had the pregnant lady let like let me lay in her lap, and she played with my hair, because you could also ask for like consensual touch and like for people to hold you, and whatever you needed in your grief you could ask for, and people could say yes or no, um, for you to work through that grief. And it was just amazing. And then the next day we went back and we processed, and then we actually did it one more time, and that time I beat the shit out of this thing and screamed, and it was just so great, and processed a lot of grief. And then we hung out, had a potluck, all that. So I've done a lot to work through my grief in community as well. And this ritual that we did is like an African tribe ritual that I don't remember all of the details, but they do it every week. They meet and share their grief weekly. And it's not something that you have to carry alone. It's something that you carry with your community. And that's certainly something that I know myself and Shaylin and other people feel a call towards Ale, as well as like creating grief spaces for community and having the conversation about grief, and about death. So I, sometimes wonder what the fuck I'm doing here on the internet, but at the same time, I get so many messages of people saying, like, "Hey, I was thinking about you and what you said," or, your story about your dad made me call my dad, or just whatever. Like, I've just had too many instances where people are impacted by my willingness to share the truth of my stories and my human experience. So that's what I'm doing, is just sharing this and crying on the internet and crying through a whole hour-long podcast about my dad's death, because I just think that there's a place for our stories. And I think that our stories are the quickest route to healing and to shifting and changing things in our own lives. Like, I'm inclined to think, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me that throughout human history, we would gather around the fire and we would share stories and hear stories, and it would impact who we are and what we think and how we view the world. And so, if we don't have the fire anymore, but we have this technology, and to me, the best use of this technology is sharing the truth of our human experience and our true human stories and our tears and our joys and our sorrows and our grief and all of that, because these are the stories that are impactful, and these are the stories that shift something in us. Like, I think that it's safe to say that someone listening to me talk out there cried with me. And I think that it's safe to say that someone out there listening will call their dad or call their mom or call their grandma or their sister or their brother or whatever, because they witnessed my grief, the truth of my grief, and the fullness of my grief. And that's the most important thing. Like, I don't think that, you know, speaking on politics or world events or whatever has as much of an impact as sharing a true, heartfelt story. Because the truth is, peace and world change and all of these things only happen within us. Like, I cannot control the world, but I can control myself. And if I can offer a story of my own grief so that you may walk through your grief a little bit differently, or you may alter a relationship with someone before they die for your own peace, like, that's the greatest gift I can give the world. And I believe that has more of an impact. That has a real impact on the world, is sharing our stories and allowing other people's stories to shape us as well. So, I've been talking for about an hour. I'm sure that there's so much more I could say. I also, want to apologize for the animals and the interruptions and all of that, but I, I think it's, again, if we were around the fire, there's going to be kids who interrupt, there's going to be sneezing, there's going to be things that happen, and it doesn't detract from the story. I think it just lends, um, like, credence to our humanity. So I'm just going to keep it because fuck it, I'm a real human with shit going on, and so are you. So I hope that you got something from this. It really is my prayer that um, people can hear these stories and hear my truth, and that it can shape you and it can shift something in your life. It can recalibrate you, if you will. um, I know that's such an easy line for me to say. Like, I should incorporate it in everything, but it just feels so fucking cheesy. I can't bring myself to do it. But that could change. That could change. So, um, yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for your comments, your likes, your subscribes. All of that really does make a difference in the algorithm and a difference in my ego and perseverance and willingness to keep going. Um, but I also at the same time feel like, what the fuck else am I going to do with my time? It's like, I don't necessarily do it for the clout. Remember that word? I do it because I don't know what else to do, and because I'm going to die. And when I die, everything that is Kala will also die. And all of these stories and insights and experiences and the willingness that I have to share it and be seen in it will die. So I think that there's beauty in sharing our stories. And I just pray, I really pray that someone out there shifts something with someone while they're still alive, so that the peace and so that the grief that they feel when that person ultimately dies is a little bit easier. Um, because it's not easy to grieve. But I think that there are things that we can do while our family is alive to make the grief a little bit easier when they do ultimately pass. So let this be your sign to call your family, to forgive your family, to make peace, to say the thing that you think is silly, that no one cares about, to take the photo, to record the conversation, to give love, even when you don't think the other person deserves it. We all deserve love. Everyone is just doing the best they can, even when it sucks, even when their best sucks. They're doing the best that they can. And the only thing that's ever shifted anything in my life, as far as I can tell, is love. So if you can't bring yourself to do it for them, do it for you. Because you will feel grief when they die. And you will have to process through that. And you will have to process through what you did to contribute to the separateness between you and that family member. So maybe you don't have a relationship with them, but maybe you take this opportunity to say something and leave it at that. I don't know what your situation is with your family and your loved ones, but I know there's people out there listening who need to be nudged to do something before it's too late. So I am urging you to do it before it's too late. And only you know whatever I'm saying right now, whatever you're thinking as I'm speaking right now, that's the thing to do. Because I guarantee you had something pop in your mind. You had someone or something or whatever pop in your mind, and that's what the fuck you need to do. So don't think too much about it. Don't doubt yourself. Just go do it right now. When you're done listening, or just fucking stop listening to me now and go do it, because one day it will be too late. And the worst thing to live with is regret. And I did a lot and I still have regret. So I think that's all I have to say. Of course, whenever I end recording, I'm like, oh, I meant to say this. I should have said this, blah, 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 blah. But you get the gist of it, and I won't take up any more of your time, but I just want to sincerely thank you for listening, and I want to thank you for doing something about it. And if you do something about it, I would love to hear about it, because really, like, if I have one person message me that a shift happened in their life because of something I shared, that makes it all worth it. 100%. I don't need 500 gazillion followers. I don't need fame. I don't need fortune. I just need to know I'm making an impact. Because that's the most important thing to me. So, and I mean that. I really do. So I love you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I would love to hear your feedback on this episode and your own grief and your own grief journey. Let's start the conversation. Grief is such a unspoken, potent part of our lives that is not going anywhere, and in fact will only become more and more present as we get older. I watched my grandparents have everyone that they love die, minus their kids. So wherever you're at in the world, I'm sending you so much love, so much gratitude, and I just really pray that you got something from this and that you take it out into the world and do something with it. I love you all. Thanks for listening.
Still hazy, funk past J's, a face of blunt ashtrays and skate with punk kids. I still chase the sun, bad days, I'm lacing up half cabs and shake junk spliffs. Whatever happened to rap, it should rest in peace to Mac, and I'm here to raise it from the dead. Cause drugs ain't cool, kid, plug you with that new shit, turn water to wine and break bread. And if I said this all the future, would you trust I told the truth, or would you run away and tell my whole fan base? Cause sooner or later, kid, they'll take your human nature and they'll burn you at the stakes while the band plays. So, in the last words, better speak up now. I said, why do birds sing? What's a king without a crown? They all stood in silence while they listened to the sound of a madman reason with the demons he found. You can't lock up ideas, we don't even exist. I just live through the speakers and the beats that we kick. Is this forbidden fruit from the Garden of Eden? Is it freedom of speech, or am I speaking for freedom?